It is such a delight to be here. I am trained as a biologist. I work in energy policy, but the most fun I have is when I get to tell people I wrote the book on kissing. The science of kissing. And the truth is I never really expected I'd set out to write the book. But I wrote a short magazine article right before Valentine's Day, several years ago now, and it was all about what happens in our brains and bodies when we connect with another person this way. And suddenly everybody was interested in a book, and I just felt like, what a great way to talk about science. There's endocrinology, anthropology, neuroscience, but it's relatable. In fact, I'm going to argue that a kiss is the most intimate behavior that two people can engage in. But yet science has barely scratched the surface for why we do it and how it influences our lives. There are a lot of theories out there about why humans connect this way. I was only interested in what I might find in the primary literature, so I'm going to talk about 3 of them here. The first has to do with the way that our brains are hardwired to recognize and notice the color red. This is something that V.S. Ramachandran works on at the University of California at San Diego, and as Desmond Morris points out, red is a color that's been influenced in our ancestral species, in our primate relatives, as a sexual signal, as a signal of being an estrus, of being ready to reproduce. You can see on the screen there is a flamboyant bottom on this bonobo when she is ready to find a mate. It works as a sexual signal, but as we know, ovulation is a little less obvious in our own species. And so Desmond Morris, a zoologist, postulated that our sexual signals shifted when humans stood upright. So he talks about the breasts moving up, the buttocks moving up to the breast area in females, in women, and the lips are what he calls a genital echo. He says they're very alluring to the opposite sex, to men, because they mirror in shape, composition, texture, and color the genitals of a female. So it's perhaps the most intriguing theory, but kissing certainly isn't all about a sexual connection. Our earliest experiences in the world often involve lip stimulation associated with feelings of love and comfort and security. And that's how we experience our parents, our relatives, people we really care about. And so this connection gets hardwired in our brain that a brush of the lips is associated with a lot of these positive emotions. And so when we want to express ourselves later in life, as adults, we connect with those we love this way. But a kiss is also something that puts us in very close proximity to another person. It's a way to sample their scent, their taste, and maybe figure out if it's worth pursuing a deeper connection. Now, are humans the only animals to kiss? What do you guys think? Raise your hand if you think animals kiss. A lot of us do. It was a trick question. Animals connect in ways that we recognize as kissing in our own species. Birds preen each other. Dogs, like mine at least, will lick any noun, person, place, or thing. Bonobos have been observed to suck on each other's tongues for 12 minutes straight. So it's fair enough to say they're doing something similar to us, but scientists have to be very careful when we describe the emotional lives of other animals, because we don't want to say words like love. We'll be accused of anthropomorphizing. So we say selective proceptivity. We say mate selection. But it's fair enough to say, when it comes to kissing-like behaviors, we're certainly not alone. What do we know about human history? The earliest literary evidence we have for kissing dates back 3,500 years to India's Vedic Sanskrit texts. There's no word for kiss, but we see things like the young lord licked the slave woman, or the 2 lovers sat and drank the moisture of each other's lips. So it's likely that 3,500 years ago, there were at least people in ancient India doing something that we would recognize today as kissing. Homer wrote about kissing in the Iliad and the Odyssey, but they weren't romantic kisses. They were kisses of supplication to represent social status. King Priam kisses the terrible man-slaying hands of Achilles. Odysseus is kissed by his slaves. And so we have a lot of examples through history of similar behaviors. Even Darwin was interested in kissing, and he would describe the behaviors he would see in humans around the world as he traveled. He often described behaviors like nibbling, licking, sucking, nipping. All of these things he surmised, if we're willing to broaden the definition of kissing to include kissing-like behaviors, it's probably universal among humans. In the 1970s, it was estimated that over 70% of cultures around the world kiss mouth-to-mouth as we would recognize it today. And since then, we've had the rise of the internet, the rise of films traveling all around the world. With globalization, I would suggest that it's probably more like 100% or very close to it at this point. What you see here is called the sensory homunculus. You can think of it as the brain's eye view of the body in terms of our sense of touch. You'll notice the hands are very large, but the lips and tongue are also enormous. They're overrepresented. We are interpreting the world through our mouths in so many more ways than we're consciously aware of. And I just want you to keep that in mind as you go about your day. It's not just about kissing, it's temperature, it's taste, it's touch, but it serves an important role informing us about the environment around us. What happens when we connect with someone in a romantic relationship? A lot. Assuming that it's a good kiss, that both people enjoy, there are the obvious things. Our breathing can deepen and become irregular. Our pulse quickens. Our pupils dilate, which is one of the reasons so many of us instinctively close our eyes when we kiss someone we love. But there's a lot under the surface as well. There can be a rise in dopamine. We heard about dopamine from Paul Zak. Dopamine is associated with craving and desire, that can't wait to be with someone kind of feeling. It's part of our brain's reward system. There's also a rise in the hormone oxytocin, the love hormone. This is responsible for a sense of attachment, wanting to connect this way and stay together. There's also a rise in serotonin. Serotonin is responsible with obsessive-compulsive thoughts and feelings. It's also involved in people who have obsessive-compulsive disorder. So in a way, kissing is acting on our bodies and our brains like a drug. In other words, there's a real chemical basis to falling in love. But I don't think that understanding these changes in our bodies takes any of the magic out of a romantic kiss. Now, I have a chapter in the book. I did look at psychology a little bit, and it's called Women Are From Venus, Men Are Easy. But I had to include the work that's been done on what different genders, how men and women think about kissing. There's an enormous study out of the State University of New York at Albany done that looks at the preferences and attitudes of kissing in men and women. Very briefly, to go over some of the highlights, women are more likely to describe kissing when asked, why do you kiss someone, as a means to assess a relationship. I'm kissing him to see where things are headed, to see if we have a future together. They're very focused on taste, breath, and teeth, and they're more likely to focus on kissing before, during, and after sex. Okay, what about the guys? Men are far more likely to describe kissing as a means to an end. They're more likely to engage in sexual behavior without really paying that much attention to whether the kissing matters very much. And they don't place much emphasis on the things that women seem to be focused on. And this is a science talk. I at least have to include one chart. In the same study, they asked, would you have sex with someone without first kissing them? Men were far more comfortable with it, and women were far more likely to say, are you subtly implying prostitution? And actually, if anyone here has seen Pretty Woman, the prostitute, played by Julia Roberts, will have sex with but not kiss her Johns. It's actually, throughout history, prostitutes have refrained from kissing, describing it as too intimate. There are a lot of these neurotransmitters, these hormones involved that happen when we're face-to-face that close, that maybe don't take place with sex, which can be, in some ways, more passive. Why the gender difference? I don't like gender stereotypes. I get really frustrated with them. I called up the authors of this study. Gordon Gallup is who I spoke to. And we talked a lot about reproductive strategies in men and women. The truth is, it's not a fair playing field. Men produce a lot of sperm throughout their lives. They can theoretically impregnate thousands of women, and some have been very reproductively successful, like Genghis Khan, and are related to a lot of people living today. On the other hand, women produce a limited number of eggs for a few days a month for a limited number of years throughout their lives. We're literally born with all of our eggs in 2 baskets, our ovaries. And so therefore, kissing is a way for us to figure out maybe if a partner is a good match for us. We invest a lot more in carrying a child. And until modern technology, a woman always knew that the baby was hers. So even though the playing field may not be fair reproductively, being a female has had its advantages as well. There's a lot of ways that we might be able to figure out more about whether someone's a good match for us based on a kiss, and I only have time to highlight one of them. But there's the famous, the famous MHC work. So MHC stands for Major Histocompatibility Complex. That is a set of genes that codes for our immune systems. And it turns out using our noses, using our scent, women are most attractive to the scents of men who carry a different set of these genes. And so when we're kissing someone, our noses are pressed right up against their skin, and it's a somewhat reliable indicator of whether this person might be a good genetic match. If we paired off and had a child, our child might be healthier, more likely to survive, and in turn pass on our genes. And so there's a lot of hidden cues that we may not be consciously aware of, but that are in play when we kiss someone. The majority of people say that they have often set out on a course for what they think will be an absolutely romantic relationship, only to be halted by a first kiss when something just seems off. And a lot of this may be happening beyond what we're consciously aware of. Finally, I have to tell you, there are such things as cooties. Now, germs, viruses, bacteria, all of these little tiny bugs can be transferred through a kiss, but there's a reason we do it. It creates a connection. It brings us close to the people we love. It's a way to express that we trust them. It's a way to express that we love them, and it's so important, and it's associated with a lot of positive emotions that do also keep us healthy. Now, I do like to say that there has been a rise in the influence of vampires in cultures around the world recently, because there are some vampires that make it look really, really good on TV, in Twilight, in True Blood, but never bite your loved ones. That's not kissing. That's the least appropriate way to show someone that you care, by literally injecting gobs of potentially deadly germs directly into their bloodstream. So don't do that, but keep kissing. And keep in mind that if it's a good romantic kiss, it may lead to other things. So thank you so much.